Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, football fans. I'm Ryan Cato, Hunter Thompson, Trevor McVeigh here. And if you're listening to us this far into us recording this damn podcast every week, you already know that this is the backups, and we're a football podcast. We are coming to you this week with an incomplete week because we record this on Tuesday nights, and you'd think that on Tuesday nights we would have everything done. But still to be played this week is the game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and that has been an absolute mess. I know, Trevor, you have a little bit of news on that, and we were going to talk about that a bit here at the beginning.
Yeah, what up, football fans? Thanks for listening again. We're going to start out with some news. Like Cato said, we're going to jump straight into Baltimore, and this absolute cannot be anything other than the absolute shit show it is. Like, it is ridiculous how much of a debacle this is. The fact that they even are playing this game surprises me because the Steelers already had their bye week moved because of Tennessee earlier in the season, so they cannot move that game. And then Baltimore's had so many positive tests, it's not even funny. Like last week we mentioned, hey, you might want to look at Gus Edwards because Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins are probably both going to be out. Then we find out like half their freaking roster. At least that's what it feels like, tested positive, or at least was in proximity of somebody with COVID. So they moved this game to Wednesday, I believe at like 3:30, which is insane. I still cannot believe it. I mean, to mention another team, Denver had all their QBs out this week, and they had to start a practice squad wide receiver who hadn't started a game at QB since his freshman year at college, I believe. And I am just so thrown in this situation. What do y'all think?
Cancel the game. Baltimore forfeits. Easy situation.
Thank you.
That's what I think too. I'm not understanding the Baltimore bias here, the reigning league MVP bias. I think it's very silly.
Like, I don't get how you can make Denver go play with the practice squad receiver at quarterback, and Baltimore's refusing to use their practice squad, and you're letting them just keep passing on games. They have a Heisman winner backup quarterback that they're refusing to use.
Yeah, RG3. It's very confusing to me. I'm not understanding the NFL stance on this, especially like the shit show that the Denver game was. I think you just cancel this game, but it's been very confusing. Something else that we saw this week as well, not COVID related, but some suspensions from an already pretty crippled team. Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, Houston just keeps shooting himself in the foot just about every other week, it feels like. So their star wide receiver this past week, Will Fuller, who had a fantastic game. And when he's healthy, he's one of the better guys out there. And we kind of might know why now, because he just busted positive for PEDs as well as Bradley Roby tested positive for PEDs. I think they were taking tainted supplements both together, I think. I think that's what they were claiming. I'm not sure how true that is. But you just hate to see it for Deshaun. And just kind of like the Houston fan base and the Houston organization, because it keeps getting worse for them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I have Will Fuller. I actually drafted him in hopes that he would stay on the field, and he has. I think thanks to some of the PEDs. But if you do play fantasy football, feel free to look at if Brandon Cooks isn't picked up in your league. He's their wide receiver 1 now, which is confusing. As well as Kiki Kute. I think he's their new wide receiver 2. I don't know what the options are going to look like there. So that is a void team.
Real quick, was it Kenny Stills? Is that his name? Didn't he ask to be traded?
I think they released him. Is that right, Hunter?
I don't remember off the top of my
Kenny
head.
Stills, yeah, they released Kenny Stills.
They released him.
Wow, I bet they're regretting that right now.
And he cleared waivers.
So nobody wanted him.
Correct.
He's 28 years old.
They traded for him.
Yeah, but Kenny
Yeah.
Stills also has never really been that impressive. He had that one solid year in Miami,
Sure,
but he's
but
nothing
like,
more. He's like a Taylor Gabriel.
if you, I mean,
Oh,
if you
man.
have, I just feel like if you have the need for talent, he's probably cheap right now. That's
Yeah, I mean, well, it could have been like when he was getting cut. I don't remember what his contract was, but I want to say he signed a contract not too long ago, like an extension in Houston not too long ago.
It's wild.
But
Uh,
I could see
what-
someone like making a play for him now that his contract is gone too. Maybe like Green
True.
Bay.
Yeah, get him really cheap. Last thing I'm going to mention, Daniel Jones, I believe, has a hamstring injury that's probably going to keep him out this next week. So maybe if it's a really deep league, look at Colt McCoy. He's going to be starting for them. I'm not sure who they play.
yeah,
I
and a
should
two
probably-
QB. If you have two QB for
Yeah.
sure, look
Yeah.
at Colt McCoy. And also that's been recently the running game has been taking off there. We were just talking about before we started recording. Wayne Gallman has had back to back maybe scoring weeks. So that's been quite the story considering the Saquon injury at the beginning of the year and with Devontae Freeman out too. So it's not much going on good in New York, but they are at the top of the division right now. Is that right?
I forgot about that.
Yes, they're
Yep.
picking 19 right now.
4-7, baby.
The draft
They're
net
picking
and the Draft Network's mock draft simulator, picking 19 New York Jets or Giants.
Goodness-
oh,
goodness
my
gracious.
God.
Yeah, and Washington also at 4-7, right behind them. That's like that's so
They
confusing.
are
to
all
me.
a game apart. Like the number 4 seed is one game away from the number 1 seed,
That's mind blowing to me.
and the 4 seed is the Eagles, right? Or no, it's Dallas. It's
The
Dallas
Dallas
right now.
Cowboys, yeah.
Which is
That's-
insane because I feel like a lot of people had them as the favorite coming out. Well,
They
at
were
least
my-
with Dak.
They were
They were
my
my
NFC
favorite.
favorites.
Yeah,
Wow.
Like,
NFC
I thought
for
they
sure.
were going to win the NFC Championship.
Woo.
I mean, with Dak, and then also the injuries to the line have been ridiculous there.
And the secondary's been pretty shaky this year.
Secondary's been garbage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trevon Diggs is the best corner on that team, and that's
Okay.
saying something.
I have a draft hypothetical question that I
What
saw.
up, baby?
Is
earlier
it coming
on
from
Twitter.
PFF? Yes, I wanted to talk about it.
Okay.
Talk about
All
it.
right. So
I'm ready.
I saw this, right? And it was, what if Trevor Lawrence says no to playing for the New York Jets? Kind of like,
Eli Manning.
a la Eli Manning, right?
Okay.
Do we think Jerry Jones is crazy enough to make a trade up for Trevor Lawrence, tag and trade Dak, and offer like 2 first rounds in a row?
Just Jerry. I feel like a lot of people would do that, if we're being honest, with how good Trevor Lawrence is. I mean, why not?
The PFF said Dak and a fourth to trade up 3 spots is what they said. I
Yeah.
think I'd even do that.
But
If I'm the Jets, I'll take Dak. Dak is a top 5 quarterback.
so you move back 3 slots and then you draft like Jamar Chase with the number 4 pick.
Right. So then you have
Denzel Mims and Dak as your
and you have
Jamar Chase,
Michael
yeah.
Pirine, who's actually kind of coming into his own as a running back. He's a rookie this year. So you have a very young offense led by Dak, and then you still get the Seahawks pick later in the 1st
Mhm.
round. You get an offensive lineman to protect Dak.
and then you get another offensive lineman round 2.
Right.
That's
And
looking
then-
nice.
And then suddenly you have Dak, Michael Pirine, Denzel Mims, Jamar Chase, Mekhi Becton, and a newly fortified offensive line.
My only
And a new head coach.
probably a new head
And
coach.
a new head coach. It better
Probably a
be.
new head coach, yeah.
God.
I mean, the only thing I could see that going really poorly with is I feel like Dak would get crucified in the New York media.
Probably, but it's like I mean, I don't know. I mean,
It's a
that's
pretty
that's
wild
not even
scenario.
that's not even on Dak though.
No,
Like,
it's not Dak. It's just a situational aspect. Like,
I'm saying like that trade isn't on Dak. Like that's a
oh yeah.
Jones to Douglas thing. Like
No. I'm saying like the minute Dak performs poorly, he'll be crucified by New York media.
I agree. I'm saying like Dak doesn't have a choice whether he's going or not. So
It makes me wonder like how Cowboy fans would react to that. Like Ethan, like do you think Ethan would be happy or sad? You know, because He
Cowboy
is one of the
fans
biggest
love
Dak
Dak.
fanboys.
Cowboy fans do love Dak.
I think
I
they
mean,
get over it pretty quick for Trevor Lawrence.
Is Trevor, how good is Trevor Lawrence going to be though? You know, coming straight into the season, are you gonna commit to a year or two of maybe average QB play, maybe below average QB play?
So just rookie growing pains. Are you going to commit to that?
That's I mean,
I would.
like, I think I would too, but I think
I
fans
100% would. Yeah.
fans are so like fickle and immature and don't understand things, you know. So
I mean, I would 100% commit just out of the pure amount of money you're saving.
Do y'all
Sure,
think
just-
that Mike McCarthy returns next year?
Yes.
yeah, I think he does too. I think this is a one-off year. Like, obviously McCarthy's, hasn't been amazing, but also like this year injury-wise has been ridiculous.
I said
I
you
bet
can
they get a
make,
new DC is what I'm predicting.
probably new DC. Yeah, but like you can make the argument COVID year, no COVID offseason with a brand new coaching staff. You can make the argument injuries. I mean, I just like as badly as Mike McCarthy's been, there's still no reason to fire him right now, in my opinion.
That wide receiver core is still insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have an up-and-coming
Plus
tight end.
Zeke.
You have
and
Zeke,
it-
who's been
yep.
down without Dak, but still a very good running back.
Did you say up and coming tight end?
Yeah, Dalton Schultz.
Schultz.
What about Blake Jarwin, the one that tore his ACL week 1?
There you go. I mean,
Yeah, he
two
tore his
great
ACL.
tight ends. I mean, that's a talented roster. And like the front, I think the box is pretty good. Like the front seven is pretty good on
The secondary is just
the Cowboys
bad.
as well as it's just they need to bolster their secondary.
Well, like in the third, you could easily grab like an Andre Cisco or like Javon Holland and have them like be a ball hogging safety for you. Like it's not.
Yeah, or even I was even thinking like a second round cornerback, and you can maybe pair him up, and hopefully Trevon Diggs develops a little bit more.
Yeah.
That could be a scary team. I feel like with Trevor Lawrence. That's
Oh yeah. I mean, it could be a very scary team with Dak too.
Well,
but,
sure.
Like
Yeah.
just like the possibility of having like a Justin Fields or even or a Trevor Lawrence would just be insane.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder.
I wouldn't be surprised if
Jack
Jerry
would
was
be
crazy enough to make that trade for the number 2 pick to get
Yeah.
Fields.
So Dak to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like
That'd be
free
nice.
Dak, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Jets would probably win that trade if they're sending Dak to New York, and getting the 4th pick in the draft. But it's totally. I mean, it totally depends on how Trevor Lawrence pans out as a rookie and in his first couple of years. I'd be so interested to see if that happened though, because how much we've been talking about how the Jets are like absolutely going to pick Trevor Lawrence. So it's very interesting. I do want to get into game of the week though, although this conversation is enthralling. I could talk about draft stuff all night. But we do want to cover this week, and we'll be talking about some quarterbacks later. But I wanted to talk about game of the week, and my game of the week this week was Arizona, New England. I very much enjoyed watching Arizona, New England, and it actually came down to a final game-winning field goal by a different Big Dick Nick, Nick Folk. Not Nick Foles, but Nick Folk. Third leg, Nick Folk came out there and kicked a nice little 50-yarder and took the New England Patriots, the most confusing team in football, past the Arizona Cardinals, who we talked about being a playoff contender in a past episode. And that game started off very well for Arizona. So it was very confusing for me to see when the Patriots like really shut them out through the next 2 quarters. The Cardinals were up 10-0 and didn't score again until the 4th quarter. And both touchdowns were by Kenyon Drake, which I'm a fan of, but it was strange to see them have a turnaround. Now, Cam Newton, we talked about this a bit before we started recording the call. Cam Newton was absolutely terrible. 9 for 18, 84 passing yards, 2 interceptions, and 9 for 46 on the ground, no touchdowns. I was saying how little I care for Cam Newton this season. Obviously, he's a Patriot, so I have some issues with him, but I'm just not seeing much good QB play, and I'd love to talk about that. And if you guys have any other thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to watch this game, but I mean, I've kind of dragged Cam Newton a little bit of late, and he really struggled this week. I mean, he barely outpassed Hinton, something like that. Whoever started for Denver this week. Um, I mean, under 100 yards and 2 interceptions in the NFL as a starting QB. That tells you why there wasn't that many suitors for him in free agency. I mean, the guy has a big arm, which doesn't look as big anymore. I don't know if y'all have noticed that. At least in the couple games I've seen him this season, it doesn't have as much zip as it normally does. And then he's always struggled with accuracy. So I feel like he needs like a McCaffrey or like a star running back to really just take the pressure off him, in my opinion. Because when he's having to lead his team in rushing and having to throw the ball, I just don't think that's the best recipe for him. And but they somehow won this game. I thought Arizona had a really good chance to start making a push for the NFC West, and they kind of dropped the ball this week. So really just disappointing game on kind of both sides of the ball, except for, I mean, Patriots got the win.
Yeah. So the whole Cam situation, I find it really difficult to sit here and truly evaluate the situation with Cam when you look at the weapons around him. Last year we were saying Tom Brady's washed with the same weapons, if not honestly worse weapons around him last year. And by no means am I sitting here saying Cam Newton is Tom Brady, but like I think Cam is still a serviceable starting quarterback in the league. Maybe a bridge guy, but like I think he's a serviceable one, right? And it's kind of hard to evaluate if he really is, though, when he has absolutely nothing around him like that. That being said, I still think Arizona should have went in there and waxed the Patriots' ass.
Agree.
And I'm very surprised that did not happen. And I think that's concerning if you're putting money on the Cardinals to potentially be a playoff contender.
Yeah, last year that defense for them looked really good, and that's what carried him a lot during the season. Tom Brady didn't have to do quite as much, but with all those guys who opted out before the season, a lot of those guys were defenders. And then it's a lot of younger guys this year who played all right, but it hasn't been, of course, like last year. So they really have to kind of lean on their QB play, which is not ideal.
It's kind of wild to me too, because the big talk about Arizona preseason and really during the season too has been that offense. I mean, that's an electrifying offense with Kyler Murray, who's on MVP pace, honestly. Kenyon Drake, and then DeAndre Hopkins with Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, et cetera, et cetera. And they looked stunted in this game, and their defense was actually putting up a fight. Stopping that run game for the Patriots that's actually won them some games. So I didn't know what to think about this week. Like I said, the Patriots are the most confusing team in football, and I'm not sure I'm going to figure them out anytime this season.
I will say one more thing that generally younger QBs do struggle in New England for some reason. I mean, the only really exception to that is because he is the exception, is Patrick Mahomes. He's the only one who really does well in New England as far as younger guys. So that might be some kind of weird curse up there.
Yeah, and speaking of actually Patrick Mahomes and former Patriots quarterback Tom Brady, Trevor, I know you had a game of the week that included them both.
Yeah, I had a game of the week. It could have been even quarter of the week, if we're being honest, because that game started out hot. Freaking Tyreek Hill came out just wrecking people left and right. It wasn't even fair. I mean, I think he had like a 77-yarder. I don't remember how long the other one was. He ended up having over 200 yards receiving in the first quarter and either 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think it was 3 in the first
Yeah.
quarter. I mean, that truly unbelievable. And Patrick Mahomes does look like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if it wasn't for, I believe it was Justin Houston, was it 2 seasons ago, being offsides late in that game, he would be undefeated against Tom Brady, I believe. But saying all that, I mean, KC got out to a good lead, but then Tampa Tom, he brought it back a little bit, got it back within 3 points late in the fourth quarter, and ended up throwing a game-sealing pick, which wasn't ideal. But overall, this was a really fun game to watch, and it was just really something. Go back and watch Tyreek's highlights just by themselves, and it's unbelievable. For a guy who's not the atypical wide receiver as far as like 6 foot plus with wide ranging, just like the classic wide receiver, and to see him how small he is and how fast he is, to be dominating people like that, it's just really fun to see. And I hope you have him on your fantasy team because, he almost broke the record.
Hunter, I think you have something to say about having him on your fantasy team.
Yeah, so I have Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill on my fantasy team.
Oh,
and poor Jake York. I put 200 up on him, and he ended up with 72, I believe, for his whole team. Poor kid played Derek Carr at quarterback for 0.6 points.
who did he play?
He played Derek Carr.
No. Who did Derek Carr play?
Oh,
I mean
Falcons.
the
The
Damn
Falcons,
right he did.
Don't act like the Falcons are good. Just don't. That's stop.
Hey, I gotta hold on to something. Let me have this week, all right?
No, dude, we still suck. Anyway, but yeah, so Mahomes and Tyreek are absolutely lethal, and it's terrifying to see them starting to heat up this late, especially if you are a team in the AFC. I mean, I think the Chiefs were already pretty much unbeatable as it is, but now it's just it adds to it. Because if they're willing to completely dismantle Tampa like that, then what are they going to do to Pittsburgh, who are kind of built the same way?
True.
Right, I agree. We've heard a lot of talk, and I saw some people talking on Twitter about Pittsburgh being the most overrated team. They are undefeated as of right now, and if the NFL would just make the damn Ravens forfeit, then they'd be 11-0. But I just don't see them beating something like that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, 462 yards and 3 touchdowns. His QB rating was 124.7. I mean, he's off the charts.
And Tampa's defense no slouch this year either, especially that front seven. It's ridiculous.
It's looking really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, this isn't a knock on Pittsburgh by any means, because I think they are the most complete team in the league right now, all the way around. I think they're the most complete roster built all the way around. But Big Ben's arm will not be able to hang with Mahomes at this point in his career. Big Ben is doing a great job of managing the offense and getting it to play at an effective level. But if you step into a shootout with Patrick Mahomes, Big Ben cannot keep up. I mean, we've seen it with Tom Brady. I'm sure if it's Aaron Rodgers versus Mahomes, we're going to see the same thing happen in the Super Bowl. You know, I don't think there's anyone in the league right now who can keep up shot for shot with the Chiefs offense.
And like another storyline, the last couple of years, that KC defense has been kind of shaky, and it's really had to be a shootout with when you play Mahomes. They've been pretty good this season, kind of shutting people down at times. So they're another different breed this year. They're as always just terrifying with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Now he has a decent defense.
Just as scary for sure. We were talking about some QB play, and we're going to talk QBs in just a moment after we get done with Game of the Week. But there's a couple teams that QB play has been kind of questionable over the past few weeks, and actually one of them decided to show up this week, a young man from Michigan State. So I know, Hunter, you want to talk about that game.
Yeah, so my game of the week this week is Minnesota versus Carolina, just solely on the fact it was a fun-ass game to watch. we got to watch Cato's boy Jeremy Chin
Love that
on
man.
back-to-back plays score 2 touchdowns from defense, which I think probably put him in rookie of the year defensive rookie of the year conversation.
How
if
many
he wasn't,
times does that happen?
Not often.
I don't think
I wouldn't be surprised if that's never happened.
Yeah, I feel like it's happened before, but it's been a while, right?
That's
But
incredible.
either way, like Jeremy Chin balling out, right? Dalvin Cook looked fairly human this game.
confusing.
Very confusing. But the thing that really caught my eye was Kirk Cousins played like an NFL quarterback today.
Yeah, he looked
on
nice.
Sunday.
Hey.
He led
looked
a
nice.
game-winning drive in the fourth quarter to win the game.
Yeah, I mean the man threw for 300 yards.
Yeah, and he did this all without Adam Thielen.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
I mean,
Um,
Justin Jefferson has been all he
Oh
is.
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
Justin Jefferson is making everybody regret passing him up, specifically the Philadelphia Eagles.
I mean, I could throw the Raiders in there too with Henry Ruggs. He hasn't done much this season.
No, I agree.
I feel like Ruggs has been effective when he's played because he did miss a few games at the start, but that's a conversation for a different day about the Ruggs and Jefferson debate. But Minnesota is 5-7 right now after starting 1-5.
Yeah. And I don't see them making the playoffs. So it's all I'm seeing is them playing into the 15th draft spot and kind of sitting where they are. I mean, that defense has not been alive this year. So that's been part of the problem. And that's what happens when you draft Cameron Dantzler. I'm just saying, but like, but it's, I don't know. We were talking about them in the worst team in the league conversation at the beginning of the year, and suddenly they're 5-7. I don't know.
They're doing what the Falcons did last year when the Falcons were like 1-7.
And what the Falcons are doing this year.
Finished 6-2. Oh,
Yeah.
we're not finished at 6-2 this year. We
No,
have to
but I
play.
mean-
We have to play Bucks twice and KC to finish the last 3 games.
Trevor, we're not talking about the Falcons right now. I'm trying to talk about
But
Minnesota.
to be fair, they do have to play the Bucks twice and KC. But yeah, Minnesota. I mean, yeah, they are kind of doing that same sort of Falcons thing as they did last year, just playing themselves out of a good draft spot. I mean, maybe Minnesota doesn't need it. I don't know, but
I mean, it's showing that Mike Zimmer still has control of his team, which is something that a lot of people were concerned about earlier in the year.
Right.
Was that he kind of lost the locker room. But it looks like they still want to play for him. Looks like they still want to win for him. Which, I mean, Zimmer's a very solid coach, so makes
Sounds
sense.
like carbon copy of what Atlanta did for Dan Quinn last year.
Yeah, exactly the same thing, yeah. But
I do want to mention, because it's been a couple episodes, my man Matt Rule. I mean, it's another week where he's in it at the very end of the game. I mean, if he could get some of those games to just flop the other way, we could be looking at a pretty decent playoff team. I know the record doesn't show it, but they've been in so many close games this season. I would not be surprised if their point differential is really not that big at all. And I really like what he's doing in Carolina, which sucks as a Falcons fan. But what he's doing with that roster, and I can't wait to see how he drafts and all the pieces he puts in Carolina. And I think he's going to be a threat in the next 2 to 4 seasons.
yeah, I mean, if I'm a Panthers fan, I'm not even mad that they're still losing the games because
Agree.
Not at all.
Because I mean, you don't want to be playing yourself out of a draft position when you're this early into a rebuild. Because yes, they are playing way above expectations, but they still have so many holes to fill, and they still need a lot of pieces. And so, like, I wouldn't even be upset if they were getting blown out if I'm a Panthers fan. I'd just be like, all right, it's part of the rebuild. Like, I mean, that's just how it is. Rebuilds are ugly most of the time, and Carolina is very fortunate right now that they're not going through an ugly rebuild.
there, I do want to say, I and we've talked about it before. That is a very talented roster there. Their point differential right now is -20, which really for a 4-8 team is not too bad.
That's not bad. Wow.
You look at a team like the Lions who are also 4-7, -76.
What's Atlanta's point differential?
They're
gosh.
plus. They're positive.
Really?
They're positive. They're plus 14, which
I'm
is
sure the Minnesota
if you're plus
and Las
14, you
Vegas
should not
game,
be. You should not be
4-7.
4-7. But
Yeah, I mean it's those 3 losses early.
Yeah.
to be fair, this is the last one I'll say. But the Jets are -170. So
Holy.
Hold on. What are the Giants? Because I know we also had the conversation about them being the worst.
Okay, we can talk about it. The Giants. No, the Giants don't have a bad one at all. Let's see, that's 9-39, -39.
Yeah,
There's
That's
not
not
a
terrible. That's what I mean.
No, I mean the Cowboys are -108.
Oh,
Oh,
gosh.
So I mean there's some really tough situations in the NFL right now. We are gonna take a quick break, come right back. We're going to talk about the QB carousel that could be coming up with drafts with some second and third years, maybe a couple veterans in this next season. And so stick with us. We will be right back. Hello, football fans. Ryan Cato here. Just wanted to say that this week's episode is brought to you by the NFL. If you're looking for a league that has an extreme bias towards the Baltimore Ravens and favors their league MVP over anything else, look no further than the National Football League. The NFL, making the Broncos play with practice squad receivers as quarterbacks since 2020. Welcome back, football fans. Ryan Cato here with Hunter Thompson, Trevor McVeigh. As always, we're the backups of football podcast. Jesus Christ, I can't say that. Football podcast. That's like one of those things where it's like red leather, yellow leather. You know what I'm talking about? No. Sally sells these shells by the she's. Anyways,
Dude, you had it.
But I had it. Anyways, I do want to talk about quarterbacks. And we kind of mentioned it earlier that we were going to be talking about quarterbacks later. But there's a hotly contested topic among the backups of how to rebuild the fucking Falcons. And I want to use that as kind of a segue into teams that might be looking for quarterbacks in the offseason, because I'm not sure that the Falcons need to pick a quarterback, high in the draft. Sue me. But I know other people have different opinions, and I'd love to hear about some draft choices for quarterbacks.
Take it, Hunter.
Okay, so me and Trevor are the two resident Falcons fans here, and we have very different schools of thought on what to do with this, draft situation with Atlanta, right? I'm in the boat that Atlanta is not going to be picking this early again for years if Atlanta does the head coaching hire and the GM hire right, which I'm expecting them to or hoping for them to, just being the loyal fan that I am. So if we're still picking like around the 10 range, we need to pick Trey Lance. And that's not a knock on Matt Ryan, not a knock on Matt Ryan at all, but he's going to be 36 next season. His arm has never been elite or never been a strong arm, and his arm looks noticeably weaker this year. And I just think we need to get ready for the future. We've seen the Colts do it with Andrew Luck, let Peyton Manning leave. We've seen the Packers do it with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers now, and we've seen the Packers do it before with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. I mean, it's one of those things like drafting a young quarterback when your starter gets old is never a bad thing. We saw the Giants do it with Daniel Jones and Eli Manning now, and now they have their starter. I don't like. I know it's not the sexy pick or the win now pick, but sometimes there is the bigger picture where it's not just a little 2-year plan. You need to have something going for the long term, because if you're always going short term, you're going to end up falling behind.
All right. I'm going to start with, it's funny that you mentioned Green Bay's draft with them taking Jordan Love, and it was universally criticized by everybody in the draft community because everyone thought it was stupid because it had Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love was a project. Excuse me. I'm saying that Matt Ryan, although Aaron Rodgers is insane, Matt Ryan is not that far behind him today. I mean, Matt Ryan is still good. The reason we wouldn't be picking this high in the future is because Matt Ryan will win us games. So let's look. This is what I expect from Matt Ryan's career. I think it won't be as high, so don't freak out. But like a Drew Brees-esque, where he won't be able to throw the deep ball anymore, but he's accurate enough to hit his receivers and just just be able to pick apart the defense every week with a good offensive play caller. That is the difference. Drew Brees has Sean Payton. Matt Ryan has Dirk Cutter. Tell me you see the difference there. If we had a good play caller who could work to Matt Ryan's strengths, we would not be in this situation. But our offensive coordinator sucks ass. And if Matt Ryan had his Sean Payton, we would be in completely different scenarios, in my opinion.
So Hunter, I'm gonna let you go in a minute, and because I sit somewhere in the middle, and I know you had something to say. I posted a thread on Twitter the other day. If anybody's interested, you can go look at it at Arcado NFL. You can find all of us on Twitter at our respective handles and find us in the bio of at the Backups Cast on Twitter. But I talked about I don't think that I trust anybody outside of the top two in this draft class. And I think just picking a quarterback because they're there is a bad idea. And I know that Kyle Trask or Mac Jones are going to go in the first round, and I think that that's a terrible idea. I think Kyle Trask is a glorified Alex Smith. No disrespect. But I'm looking towards the future, and I say you pick a traits quarterback with a hell of a lot of arm talent. He's big, he can run, and you sit him behind Matt Ryan for a few years. I'm talking 3 or 4 years, and just develop. And then you have a quarterback for the future. If it doesn't work out, you still have drafts to come. But I just think picking a quarterback that's not much like Matt Ryan, that isn't really going to develop in the same way, that you're going to have to change your entire system for just to pick them, is a bad idea. And that's where I stand. So I think that they should get Desmond Ridder or Kellen Mond, who did have a bad week. I want to say Kellen Mond looked like shit this week, but I'm in love with him. So, Hunter, what do you have to say?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I don't disagree with you on your reasoning behind that at all, Cato. I normally I would say yes, that works, but I'm obviously much higher on Trey Lance than you, honestly, and I think Trey Lance has potential to be like the next Josh Allen, which is good. I've also seen him compared to Deshaun Watson, but that's the Trey Lance scouting review, something for a different day. Trevor, did you really just compare Matt Ryan to Aaron fucking Rodgers?
I'm not saying they're on the same level, but if we're looking at QB hierarchy, they're not that far off.
If you want to talk about tiers right now in the NFL, I mean, we are Matt Ryan fanboys here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's Mahomes on his own, and there's Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think Tom Brady is not as good as Matt Ryan today.
I think they're the same level. I think Matt Ryan.
I mean, I could make that argument as well, but I mean, it's not that big of a gap between Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers to me.
I think it's a much bigger gap than you think it is. With Green Bay, we're finally seeing Green Bay run an offense where Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to do it all himself because of the running backs that they have there. But we've also still seen Aaron Rodgers make every single throw that Aaron Rodgers 5 years ago would make. He's still dropping the perfect balls. Like he's doing everything perfectly. He's just not having to do it all.
I will say a little bit of the difference between Aaron Rodgers today and in the past. He actually has a semi-competent defense, which he's really never had in his career, which is kind of sad to see because I think he easily would have won at least a couple Super Bowls, maybe even 3. But I think it might be a little too late because now we're in the Patrick Mahomes era, and to win a Super Bowl right now, it's going to be a freaking tall mountain to climb. But I think that's enough about the Falcons. Let's jump to a different team.
Yeah, there are a few teams that are going to be looking a bit quarterback needy when it comes to the draft. We talked about the Jets and the Cowboys situation earlier, so we don't really need to hit on them. Although, the Jets have been looking like a lock pick for Trevor Lawrence. But a couple of teams that I think that are interesting that we were talking about just moments ago, Hunter, in your mock, are both Carolina and Washington. Now, Washington is one thing. Dwayne Haskins is kind of disappointed, and he could be on the move in the offseason. Carolina did just sign Teddy Bridgewater to a fairly sizable contract. Nothing huge, but something decent. And he's looked good this season. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on those two teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So Washington obviously needs a quarterback. Rivera is just not sold on Haskins. Which
Me neither.
That's his call. I'm sorry.
I said me neither.
Yeah, I mean, like that's just a personal opinion on Haskins. Like, I think he deserves another shot somewhere, but if he doesn't get it, it's not a huge deal to me. Like, I'm not super diehard Haskins. Like, it's whatever. But they obviously need a quarterback. Carolina, on the other hand, is being rebuilt from the ground up with Matt Rule. Right? We were talking about that earlier. Teddy Bridgewater is not that guy. Teddy Bridgewater is a poor man's Alex Smith. I mean, truthfully. And I think you need to upgrade from that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking quarterback in this draft with a guy like Zach Wilson or Trey Lance to sit behind Bridgewater for a year or two to be groomed.
Yeah, my viewpoint with Carolina, you're in kind of a lucky situation with Matt Rule's contract that you can wait if you need to. And with Teddy B, he's kind of playing just well enough to where it's like he's kind of playing into his contract. It's like a 3-year deal, not worth that much money. And I think if you wait and find the right QB falls in your lap as far as draft, whether it's this year or maybe even next year, I think that's the perfect plan for them. They don't have to be like dive in, put all their chips in right now to get a QB, I think, because they have Teddy B. So they just got to wait for the right one to fall in their lap, and they're golden. That's my opinion. I wouldn't be too antsy if I'm Carolina because you're still rebuilding. I would probably go BPA with their first pick this year, whether that is a QB or another position of need. That's where I would go. And then Washington, gosh, they're a mess. I mean, you have Alex Smith, who I think this is either his last year or I'm not sure if he even plays next year. He might have just wanted to prove that he can still play and then ride out in the sunset after that leg injury. And then you have Dwayne Haskins. I am shocked. I mean, even when who do they start right after they benched him? Is it Keenum? Kyle Allen, yeah. Even after would he get hurt, right?
Yes.
So you figure he'd come back in, but no, they put in Alex Smith. So I guess
Kyle Allen's out for the season, bro.
Well, I was talking about Haskins. I'm sorry, I was using pronouns. Wouldn't be specific, but I thought they would put Haskins back in. Like, I mean, he only sat out a few weeks, but they went with Alex Smith, and I like Haskins. I don't love him. I feel like he can make the throws you want him to make. But I have seen I saw it in one article where they were questioning his work ethic, which is kind of a big thing in the NFL. Like Drew Brees is notorious for being the first one in the building, the first one out of the building. That's kind of how you have to be to lead a franchise. So if he's not going to do that for a franchise, I wouldn't want him. That's for sure. So if I'm putting myself in their shoes, I think they're a little bit more desperate than me than Carolina as far as getting a QB. So I would be like more willing to pull the trigger on a Kyle Trask or a Mac Jones if it came to it or something like that.
I think luckily for Washington, they'll probably get a top 3 or 4 quarterback. But yeah, I'm not super sold on Haskins either. I mean, if he goes somewhere where maybe he can play backup and maybe win the starting job, that might be good for him. But I don't think Washington is that place. And even though Washington, you look at They have, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson really coming into his own. I mean, even J.D. McKissick has looked really good. So I don't know what the QB situation is going to be in Washington next year. But there are a few quarterbacks I want to touch on before we move on from this QB situation. Some besides Haskins that could be on the move as well. We were talking about a possible Sam Darnold move, considering that they'll likely pick Trey Lance, or goodness gracious, Trevor Lawrence, not Trey Lance, as well
Could be
as
Trey Lance.
I mean, yeah, who knows with Joe Douglas? I mean, but
If Trey Lance goes first overall, bro, I will get his name tattooed on my ass right now.
I'll do the
will
same.
hope yeah, we will all get okay. That's like a binding contract. We said it on the podcast. So if Trey Lance goes first overall, we're all getting his name tattooed on our ass. Trey, this one's for you, baby. Love that you opted out this season. So, but I do want to talk about Darnold as well as possible Matt Stafford. I know there's some landing places for him, and even maybe the Giants QB situation.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Stafford's on the move at the end of this year. Just kind of like if depending on how Detroit wants to handle their rebuild. Which if I'm Detroit, if I get hired to be the GM of Detroit, which won't happen, but if I were to, I would do everything in my power to ship Matt Stafford out to Washington and just accumulate picks on picks on picks and then rebuild that roster. Nothing against Matt Stafford, but I just at the point where in his career that he's at, you got to move on. To go through a complete roster rebuild, you got to move on from him. Sam Darnold, I'm praying he gets dealt to like Indianapolis after this season. Watching Frank Reich make Sam Darnold good would be fucking insane to watch. Yeah, that's my thought on those two.
Yeah.
I think you got it.
I was gonna say was Sam Darnold. I love his arm talent. I think Adam Gase is just screwed with his head too much. So I think he needs to get behind a veteran. So whether it is behind Phillip Rivers for another year, if he plays another year, or like one of my favorites, him going to the Steelers and sitting behind Big Ben for a year or two, would be fantastic for him. But then you could also look at like maybe Tampa or what if he sat behind Russell Wilson? I know they don't play the same. I mean, but Russell Wilson's not the youngest. He's not the oldest either. But that wouldn't be too bad to nurture there.
Russell Wilson still has like a solid 7 years left in his career. And if you're saying Matt Ryan can go to like 40, then Russell Wilson has like 13.
If Atlanta had the freaking money, I'd love for him to sit behind Matt Ryan. That's for sure. The fun one, in my opinion, is Matthew Stafford. Unfortunately, I haven't looked, of course, but off the top of my head, Stafford's contract, I don't think is tradable. But if he could be traded, I mean, he's an instant upgrade over, I don't know, Teddy B in Washington, like Jacksonville. Like, there's a lot of places that could use him. And I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be kind of cool to see him get traded. That'd be like one of the bigger names to ever get traded.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pittsburgh is an interesting landing spot for any of those younger quarterbacks that are looking to sit for a year or two. As well as like, I mean, even if we see Big Ben kind of like hang up the cleats after this season, you could see, like a guy like Matt Stafford come in and be that quarterback for that team. But that would, I mean, Pittsburgh losing Big Ben this season would actually probably be pretty dangerous because we saw last year that quarterback play was not very good from the backups.
Not at all.
To put it lightly. So it is going to be an interesting little QB carousel, I think, come the offseason and with the draft. We're going to see all sorts of stuff happen that I'm sure we haven't even thought of. That's how it always goes in the offseason. So if either of you have anything else to say about quarterbacks right now, I'd love to hear it because we're going to talk about some quarterbacks in just a moment and backups of the week.
Do we think Jimmy Garoppolo could get dealt to a team like New England or Pittsburgh or any team that really needs a quarterback, like maybe Washington if they win the NFC East somehow?
Garoppolo back to New England would be a fucking story. That would be incredible because Bill Belichick always liked Garoppolo. So that'd be quite the story. And I mean, we've seen Nick Mullins play just fine in the San Francisco offense. So that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a positive for both sides if that were ever to happen between Jimmy G and New England. Yeah, I don't know what it is. He hasn't looked that great with him and Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he's had some really good moments, but then there's other moments like, ooh, not looking so hot, especially for his contract. So if he could get paired back with Bill and Josh McDaniels, I mean, he could be back to the heights that we were kind of expecting out of him. But the only thing with that is like, does San Francisco stick with Nick Mullins? I mean, you get kind of the same level of play, but I would think he'd want more from the QB. So I just don't know where they would go
I feel like
post Jimmy G.
I feel like if you deal Jimmy Garoppolo, John Lynch has proven that he's an aggressive GM. I feel like he would make a move up for a Lance or a Wilson, in just because like Shanahan's offense will make any quarterback look solid.
That'd be a fascinating move. You deal Garoppolo and move up for that would be something. Like I said, it's gonna be a QB carousel when it comes to next year. Pretty much nobody is safe, save an elite few. But I know we are going to continue talking quarterbacks. I guess this is the quarterback episode in backups of the week. And Trevor, you wanted to mention one quarterback, but also one half quarterback, I guess, that came from Denver. So I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, I had to throw in one honorable mention, and that was Denver's quotations quarterback this week, which was Kendall Hinton, who was their wide receiver on their practice squad, who I mentioned earlier hadn't started a game at QB since a freshman in college, I believe. I think he was 1-9 for like 13 yards passing, which of course is atrocious. But I mean, the man had no idea he was starting till like the day before or maybe on that day, because the entire QB room either was in close contact or had COVID. I'm not sure which players did and didn't have it, but the fact that he went out there, I mean, they got their ass kicked. I mean, you can't expect too much if you're running with that out there. But I mean, you got to respect the man. I mean, you can't meme him too hard when it's still like one of the shitty situations I've ever seen. Right. But still pretty cool. You can say he started an NFL football game at QB. But my real backup of the week, who's more of like a funner story than me than he is like a decent backup, and that was Brandon Allen for Cincinnati, who almost beat the Giants. And I was reading about him today. So they signed him as their backup, as their like backup plan as far as COVID. So if anybody got tested positive on their starting roster, they would bring him in from the practice squad. So apparently during all of training camp and during practices and everything, the coach and coaches would not let him get close to people because they could not afford for him to get COVID. So in a lot of the meetings he did them virtually. So like there was zero risk of him getting COVID. So he literally came into this week and was having to like make relationships with the guys that he played with, because he hasn't really interacted with them all year, which I thought was hilarious. Because I think this is his first year in Cincy, because he's coming from Denver. But I thought that was an awesome story. He went 17 of 29, 130 yards, a TD and an interception. Of course, not amazing, but that story was worth a mention. I thought that was really cool. And he almost beat the Giants, who were terrible.
Lord almighty.
That's funny as hell. All right. So my backup of the week is none other than former Tampa Bay, former Chicago, former Oakland quarterback. Carolina. He's in Carolina too?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. I had Carolina on the list too. And current Jacksonville quarterback Mike motherfucking Glennon.
The GOAT.
Mike Glennon came in after Jake Luton, however you want to say his last name. I think it's Luton. Played piss poorly. He's been bad. Jake Luton had been bad. Mike Glennon played fairly well. He threw for, I want to say, like 250 yards, a couple touchdowns, and almost outdueled Baker Mayfield. Which, granted, Baker looked a little off this game, but, Jacksonville still hung in there. It was a 2-point game. I wouldn't be surprised if Glennon gets benched after this week because you're kind of ruining Jacksonville's tank job. But
yeah, they about screwed that up.
yeah, they about screwed their tank job over. But I'm still going to give props to Mike Glennon for where it's due. He played well. He looked solid. He looked like a competent backup quarterback, which is what we come to love on this podcast.
You damn
Hell
right.
yeah.
You
I
damn
do want
right.
to say, too, Mike Glennon played without DJ Chark and without Chris Conley. He was missing quite a few of his options, and his top option, let me hear it for another guy that I was a fan of pre-draft. There's a thread on him on our backups Twitter. Colin Johnson.
Yeah.
4 for 96 and a touchdown. Come on with it. Come on with it.
Like
4
a
for 96
6'6"
and a
freaking
touchdown.
wide
Okay.
receiver.
Yep, a ridiculously tall receiver. I said that he should beef up and play tight end in the NFL. He's that big. But yeah, looked great. It's his second touchdown of the year. Split the secondary. If you want to go watch that, type in Colin Johnson touchdown on Twitter. It'll come right up. But yeah, I mean, Mike Glennon almost beating the possibly playoff team Browns, which is confusing. But yeah, hell of a game by Mike Glennon. Much applause for that. The final backup of the week that I'd like to talk about this week. He's on and off starting jobs, on and off our podcast. If he got on this podcast, I'd probably piss myself. Ryan Fitzpatrick, aka the Fitzmagic,
Let's go.
started a game this week in lieu of Tua, and beat down the New York Jets. I mean, the New York Jets, like we've talked about, the worst team in the NFL, like far and away the worst team in the NFL. But yeah, 257 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And how about the Ryan Fitzpatrick to Devontae Parker connection this week? 8 receptions, 119 yards on 14 targets to Devontae Parker. So, I mean, like, a hell of a game from Devontae Parker, one of the only like really solid options on that Miami receiving core, but did his job. And Ryan Fitzpatrick led the Dolphins past the winless Jets 20-3, and the Jets continued their tank job. That is all I've got for this episode. I'd love to hear some final words from the boys, and I will bring us home.
Go ahead, Hunter.
All right, so yeah, screw technology. Last week we teased having a special guest on the show. Special guest recording got vanished. We don't really know what happened to it. But special guest said he'll be back soon and wants to be back soon. So that's cool. But anyway, follow us all on Twitter. Thank y'all for listening. Who do I want to say fuck this week? Fuck Taysom Hill.
Hey. I'm just gonna throw out there. Baltimore forfeit. Start the hashtag. This is ridiculous. Pittsburgh should have this win. I mean, Pittsburgh got screwed twice this year. They played Tennessee the week that Tennessee had a bunch of positives, and they had to move their bye week. And then they come into this week, and they're having to play on Wednesday, so they're being forced to play on a short week going into the next week because of Baltimore cannot get their shit together. So Pittsburgh gets screwed either way. If they lose this game, I mean, they get screwed in every way, shape, or form. So I will be ranting on about that next week if Baltimore wins. Go Falcons. Thanks for listening.
Yep. A final word from me. Just saw this tweet from Alex Barnett. Hunter, you liked it earlier, so I know you've seen it. What if the Jags signed Jameis Winston in the offseason, then take Penny Sewell? Just a random dream I had the other night.
Oh, mother of God.
That could be fascinating. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I know we are already way over on this episode. So thank you for being here. If you'd like to see our faces, Trevor's outline of a face, Hunter with his cute little bedhead today, you can find us on YouTube at the Backups Cast. Go ahead and subscribe. And I know you're finding us on whatever podcast service you use currently, but tell your friends we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can even find us on Podbean if that's your jam. And shout outs to Brian Lamb and the ISN Podcast Network, where we've been hosted this season. Finally, it's a hashtag Fire Adam Gase type night, and we will talk to you later.